Welcome to Side Alpha Leadership, a podcast where leaders can share their experiences and discuss what leadership means to them. I'm your host, David Polikoff. Hello and welcome to this month's Side Alpha Leadership. I'm your host, David Polikoff. On the phone with me, I have Stephnie White. Stephnie is a second-time guest. Had her on here about 3 or 4 months ago, so if you didn't hear that show, we talked all about fire department HR stuff. Go back and check out that show. Stephnie, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, David.
So if you want to, tell my dozens and dozens of listeners a little bit about yourself, and then we'll go kick right into it.
I am a technician in Fairfax County Fire and Rescue. That's a department not too crazy far from you, about an hour away in the Northern Virginia area, right outside of DC. And I have been there. I just started year 19 a couple days ago, so it's been quite a fun ride in the Northern Virginia DMV area.
And full disclosure, obviously, as my listeners know, I retired from Montgomery County, so we were definitely neighbors and sometimes ran with each other between mutual aid agreements. So 19 years, are you going to do the full 25, 30, or are you going to do 19 and bow out gracefully, or what's your plan?
We're going to find out. Your guess is as good as mine. I'm going to get to that 20-year mark and then just reassess what the golden priorities are. If my body is feeling great and I still have a spine that's all in one piece, I might make it to 25. And if the body is eroding, then I've always stayed at busy houses, which has kept me from going crazy. At the same time, maybe not the wisest decision for my joints. So we'll see. We'll see where we are physically. I think I'm going to base the decision off of that once I get to 20.
I think Go ahead.
No, I'd love to go as long as I can, but I think we need to start being a little bit more realistic of being able to actually walk out the door, not limp out the door if possible. So
I agree 100%. That was my goal. I was fortunate enough to do 34 years. The plan was to do 37 or 38. I was getting ready to get into our drop, and the job at Frederick County opened up, and I applied for it and got hired. So it was rolled right out. And it's almost been 2 years since retirement. But I went out healthy, and like you said, you want to make sure that you put forward this long career of running into emergencies while people are running away. Not to sound too cliche, our body takes a lot of abuse when it comes to our eating habits, our sleeping habits, and physical abuse. You want to be able to enjoy the retirement. You earned a retirement. You would definitely like to enjoy the retirement. And what I found is that I got hurt more as a battalion chief than I did ever being on the floor as a lieutenant captain or firefighter. But I don't know if that's just because I had that. Well, I'm not carrying a hose line anymore, but you're still going into burning buildings. So I had that little latitude of kind of moving around the fire ground a little more freely, and you get yourself into situations where you hurt your neck, you hurt your back, you hurt your legs, but nothing debilitating. But kudos to you. Hopefully, you can do your 25 or 30 years if the body and the mind are willing. Which it's going to bring us up to our first topic. We talked a little bit offline about the new members, new career, new volunteers that are coming in. Truly, hands down, being in the fire service is in my opinion, and a lot of people's opinion, it not only is it a calling, but it is the best job in the world. It's one of those jobs which I joke to people that it's the only job where other people don't mind doing your work. And when I talk work, for people that don't understand, those are working fires jobs. People don't mind coming in and doing your work for you. And then they'll let you know that they did your work, and they don't even complain about it. So, that's one of those, this job is truly a calling. You definitely create this bond of a second family. Sometimes you confide in your second family more than you do with your first family. And then you're spending, if you're on, a 24/48 schedule or 24/72, you're spending a third to half of your life with this second family. So you tend to get very close, and it's a very tight-knit group of people. But let's talk a little bit about the new people coming in, and I've heard dual arguments. One of the arguments is the new firefighters are coming in; they don't appreciate the job. They don't see it as a calling. They see it more as of a job. They're soft. They're not. They wear their feelings on their sleeves. They're too emotional. With that argument, my counter argument, like I talked to you offline, is that these people coming in are some of the smartest people that we see coming into the fire service because they've always known what it was like to work with computers and things like that. So, what's your feeling on that?
I think it's a I think that's a question that actually deserves a tiered response. One, as you already mentioned, you alluded to the education level of the newest generation, and we are seeing a generation that has college degrees at a level that we have not seen before. I think a lot of us came in as young grunts right out of high school. We didn't have a college education, and we viewed this as a true blue collar job when we came in. I think because it has been such an educated era, what is our recruitment doing? And I don't think when we have these conversations, we're wisely looking at that, because you can't blame a kid for their outlook on the job when that's what recruitment described to them. When recruitment is going to colleges and saying, hey, if you come to this job, you can promote up to captain and do recruitment and they describe it in a more office setting or in a more cerebral setting, and they kind of tone down some of the physical grunt, blue-collar nature of it. I think that's happening in some places, in which case you can't really blame the candidate if that's what they were told. So I think that's part of it. Another part of it, as you already alluded, is this is a generation that has worked with computers and devices and games. They might not have been outside climbing trees and falling out of them like the rest of us were. So their outlook on rough and rugged activity is probably a lot different. They're probably going to have their noses in their phones a little more because that's what they're used to. So I think a combination of those two things, they're different. I don't think it's fair necessarily to call them soft in some ways, because I can tell you that they can do things in a computer setting that I could never do. So their skill set is completely different than yours and mine, because the way they were raised was probably completely different, and the way they were recruited was definitely different.
One of the things that you said that I want to elaborate on is the recruitment component. I've never served as recruitment for career people. When people ask me, "Oh, you're in the fire department," and they ask, I was thinking about that. I'm always brutally honest about what the fire department is. So I can't speak to what the actual recruiting teams are going out there saying. I can say that when we teach our orientation classes for volunteers that are coming into Frederick, my PowerPoint is brutally honest. It talks about we work in the winter, we work in the cold, we work in the heat, we get dirty, we get smelly, we get hurt, we get burned. We see the worst that humanity has to offer each other. We see horrible things that we'll never forget, and I explain some of those things. So I try to front load that as much as possible, because some of the volunteers that are coming in, they're thinking, maybe I want to do this for a career. So I want them to understand that what you're going to do and see and experience is not always sitting behind a desk in an air-conditioned room. It's dirty, it's smelly, it's sad, but it's also the best in the world. You make friends. I tell them the friends that you make in the fire service are the friends that you're going to keep for life. I tell them I don't even remember some of my high school friends that weren't in the fire department, but I can tell you who all the friends were from high school that were in the fire department, and I still talk to them more than 3 years later, because I've been graduated for more than 3 years from out of high school. But I try to be very honest, and maybe that's the question, like you said, we should be asking the recruitment is, let's stop talking about how great the benefits are. Let's stop talking about, hey, you only have to work 8 days a month or 7 days a month. Let's stop talking about, the overtime and all that stuff, and start talking about what the job actually is. I don't think anybody that joins the military has the or doesn't know that there's a chance that somebody on the other side of the battlefield is trying to kill them. I think that people understand that. And I think that we need to make sure that recruitment is honest about the job. What I have seen is that numbers, especially on the career side, are going down. In Frederick, we're having a hard time getting people to apply. I know it's the same in Montgomery. I'm not sure about Fairfax, but I can only imagine in the Baltimore, Washington metropolitan area, we're seeing this decline in applicants. But I think that recruitment needs to really hype up the job, but be brutally honest about what are the things that you're going to be doing on the job. It's not all doom and gloom, but it's also not all air conditioned and clean. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I think it's funny because we want to crap on the younger generation, but we're not going to be doing this job in our 80s, right? Hopefully you and I are going to be sitting not on the same beach, but, Mai Tai somewhere on a beach, and we're not going to be thinking about the job. We need to foster the younger generation because we literally need them for our survival. You have to have a good, strong continuation plan for your department. You hit something on the head when you were talking about how you bring in the volunteers and you explain to them what they're about to get into. I would love to see that model in recruit school. Now, if on the very first day you sat me down in recruit school and you said, congratulations, Stephanie, you won the lotto, best job in the world. By the way, you're probably not going to be sleeping. You might be getting cancer. You might be getting all these things. If it's day one, I am going to run the hell out that door. Maybe 3-4 weeks in, when I've gotten hooked by the camaraderie, when I've gotten a little bit of a taste of fire, something where you see your recruits be at this sweet spot of starting to develop that addiction, have that talk. Have a module built in where you explain to them, hey, when you come out, here is the reality of the field. And it's soon enough that if I decide this isn't for me, I can leave without feeling like I'm too invested and I've wasted all this time. But it's far enough in that I get a taste of the job and think, okay, you know what? I like this shit. Maybe this is really worth it. And I think if you have modules like that built in, like every 2 weeks, reality of firehouse life, and then build in along with that life skills that you need to have to combat those things. So maybe, hey, you're not going to be getting sleep. We're going to talk about sleep hygiene for one afternoon. So you give them the problem and then give them solutions. Are we going to then have better prepared rookies when they graduate? And are they already going to be a little more resilient and ahead of the ball than maybe we were?
I want to touch on a couple of things, where I think you're right. I don't think we should open the faucet up or the fire hose and hit them with it on the first day of class while they're still in their suit and tie. They haven't even gotten their uniforms yet. I think there needs to be that honesty during the recruitment process where people are coming in to fill out their applications. On the volunteer side, we get that orientation class when they first join. The problem is that if I don't tell them on that first day what to expect and what this job, whether you get a paycheck or not, is all about. When they join, they go and they take some classes, Fire One, they take their EMT, and they get into the firehouse and they start running calls. I don't want it to be a shock. I was like, oh, I didn't realize it was going to be like this. I didn't realize that, that I'm going to run 5 calls after midnight. There's a call back for you. But they need to understand
what you did there.
I did. So they need to understand that somewhere in their training, they need to understand that you're going to be sleep deprived, but there's ways around that. What I tell people, I said, you're going to learn that you can eat faster than anybody else in your family, and you're going to be done. My wife gets mad at me because I finished my food before they even start. But that's 35 years of conditioning of, if I don't eat now, by the time I come back, they're going to do their best to make the food warm by putting a paper towel over it and leaving it on the table, and I'm eating cold food. So there's a lot of things that go into the job, and I think that needs to be pointed out. we get to do that. When I was a recruit instructor in Montgomery County, myself and another captain got an hour with the recruits probably about a week before they graduated, and we just talked about station life, the things that they don't teach you in recruit class, and what it's all about. And the biggest thing was making that meal when you come off probation, that thank you meal. And a lot of people, they didn't know how to cook. And I told him, I said, well, now's the time to start, because you're not going to be living with your mom and dad for the rest of your life. You need to learn how to be on your own. And I'm not sure if you're seeing this, but I am seeing it with these 18 and 19 and even 20-year-olds, coming into the fire service. They don't know how to cook, barely know how to write a check, don't know how to write in cursive. They don't know how to operate a broom or a mop, how to clean a toilet. Yes, those are menial things, but those are things that we do in the firehouse. We don't have maid service. And as a rookie, you're definitely going to have to learn how to wash dishes by hand and things like that. And they've never done that. So I think there has to be some patience on the senior firefighter or the mentors or the whoever that gets assigned to them and when they come out. And you almost have to be either like a big brother or a big sister or a mom or a dad when they come into the fire service, because these things they didn't learn. Are you seeing some of that with the new people that are coming in?
So it's funny with your timing of that question. The last conversation you and I had was about having accountability in the firehouse and teaching people that they need to have the space to laugh around the kitchen table and apologize and that kind of stuff. That was our last conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually was teaching a class on it in Richmond earlier in the week. And even though it's a completely separate subject, that was what a lot of the class participants wanted to talk about. Was they said, hey, how do we handle these new kids who are coming in? They've never even freaking done their own laundry. They've never seen a chainsaw, much less started one. And we're having to, before we can even do basic probie stuff with them, we're having to just do surviving around the station stuff with them. And my response to that is, it's frustrating as hell. And I went through this myself personally. I am ashamed to say I fell flat on my face with my attitude for quite some time before having a come to Jesus talk with myself of, I think a lot of us are frustrated because, hey, we didn't hire these kids who can't even do their own laundry or microwave mac and cheese. Why am I responsible for your deficiencies? And the answer is, I'm responsible for your deficiencies because I am responsible for how those damn calls go when our truck runs out the door. And you are on that engine or truck with me. So it's my job to bring you up to my level of performance. And if that means having to go down to your level and to teach you some things and to coach and mentor some things, I will. Now, we're not staying down there. That's not a fun place to hang out. We're going to come up to my level. But if I have to go down and get you and bring you back up with me, then that's what I have to do. Because at the end of the day, we're responsible for the calls. We're responsible for how they work. We're responsible for turning this young being into a quality firefighter. And if that means doing some, pardon the Irish, basic bitch life stuff, then that's what we have to do. Is it fun? No. Are we going to be a little annoyed by it? Yes. But it is a different generation, and it is what we're working with. And it is, therefore, our responsibility. I think we need to sit back and look at the ways in which we were taught, pull out what's applicable to the new generation, keep it, and then add stuff in. These kids are on their phones all the time. Okay, well, there's a lot of information now on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, whatever these kids are into at the moment. Give them an assignment. Hey, listen, I don't care how you get the freaking information. You're going to teach me a drill this afternoon on this. And you know what? If they go learn how to do it on TikTok, that's fine, because they're coming back and they're demonstrating that they know how to do it to me. I shouldn't be penalizing them for using those modern methods to learn something, as long as they can prove to me that they actually know how to do it and can apply it in real life. I think a huge part of our problem is we're kind of getting a little bit of the case how I learned. Well, I think you and I can honestly say, as someone recently told me, we were born in the late 1900s. And that hurts, but it's true. It's 2023. Life is a lot different than the 1900s. So we gotta figure that out and roll with it.
Yeah, I think one of the things, well, actually, I don't think I know one of the things that we, as well, shall we say, senior members in the fire service, need to develop is patience. And we say it all the time. Obviously, we want to make sure that we're patient with the calls that we run with the public and things like that, because we have an understanding, at least we should, that the public calls 911 for everything. If they can't figure something out, they call 911, knowing that somebody's going to show up in an ambulance or a fire engine and be able to solve their problem. That's part of the job, and I make sure that people understand that. But we also need to kind of shine the light of patience to the newer people that are coming in, almost like a life check moment when they come in, saying, "All right, do you know how to mop the floor?" Or "Hey, I need you to go mop the floor," and you watch them mop the floor, and it's like, "Yeah, yeah, you're. It's going to take you forever to do it. Let me show you how to do it this way. Let me show you how to clean a toilet. Let me show you how to
Well, I
run
think,
a dishwasher." Go ahead.
sorry, I think another thing that we're not paying attention to, so this is the Y generation, right? When you and I came in, we did not ask why, we just did. Otherwise, we were getting eviscerated. This is a generation that wants to know why. And you know what? Screw it. I'm going to explain it to you. You need to show me consistency in the little things in the safe haven of a firehouse where there is no danger. So that way I know when we take you on these dangerous calls, you are going to be just as consistent in doing the little things and not taking shortcuts. I need to see you do that in safety before I trust you to do it in danger. Explain it to them. And if you explain it to them, they're more likely to do it and do it with a willing attitude. And would it be cool if we could just tell somebody to do something and they would do it because they know they have to? Yeah, but if not, I don't see any loss in my day in explaining it to them.
Yeah, we've talked about this, or I have on this show a lot, telling people that it's okay for them to want to know why, because that's what they need. They need the whole picture. And I try to tell older officers, captains, battalion chiefs, I said, it's not a sign of disrespect. When you tell them what you want done and why you want it done, they have the full picture and they can move forward with that. That's how they've grown up. They've grown up with that instant gratification of being able to go wherever they want to get all the information in the world that's at their fingertips. So when you say, "Hey, we need to make sure that we pull a line and we take it to here," you need to tell them why. Well, because we're the first due engine company and we're going to go in through the front door, and the truck's going to be in front of us. They're going to be doing the search, so we need to protect them. You front load all of that long before that call ever comes in. So when you say, "Hey, get a line to the
Right.
front door," they already know the why. And I tell people, I said, "Look, go get the book by Simon Sinek for It Starts With Why," and it really does a good job of explaining why you explain all the way through your thought process. I
It
think,
really does.
yeah, the younger generation will understand. That's how they think. Like you said, when you and I came in, they would say, "Hey, Rook, go clean the toilets." Okay, and then I went and cleaned the toilet. Or, "Hey, I need you to do this, this, and this on the engine." Okay, and I went and did it. And eventually, they would tell me why, or I would hear it in a conversation. "Hey, we had to do this today because of this," and then I would just know. Unfortunately, that's not how people are learning now, because there's so much more information. Just take the Fire One class that we took when we came in as 18-year-olds. It's so much more information in that class now. Same thing with hazmat and EMT. I mean, when I took EMT, it was 90 hours. And anybody that's listening, don't go back and find out how long ago 90-hour EMT was. But it's up to 210 hours now. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, there's a lot of information that's thrown at this younger gen. I'm not going to call them kids because some of them are in their 20s. That they to know the whole picture, to see the whole picture, allows them to operate more efficiently. And I think that once we understand, or once people grasp that, then I think they'll find life a lot easier. And again, on the scene of the emergency is not the time for them to ask why. You should have already preloaded that long before the call ever happened. And that's going to bring us into the next part of this podcast where we talk about expectations. What are the expectations of the captain or the lieutenant to the rank and file, even to the young guys? And then what are the expectations from senior staff, battalion chiefs and higher, down to the captains and lieutenants and firefighters? And then what are the expectations, or what does the rank and file expect from senior staff? And I know you're going to have a flow chart to figure all this out. But just starting off.
Can I answer that backwards?
Absolutely.
So we'll start backwards with, what do I expect of senior staff of the department? And then we'll just slide on down the food chain. I expect you to be there and to be present. I expect you to have eyes and ears in the fire service. I understand there's only, the closer you get to the top, the fewer there are. So I expect you to be getting feedback from people you trust in the field, and then showing up in the field every now and then. If you can devote one day of a month, depending on who you are, to doing dinner in a firehouse or stopping by to get coffee, that would be amazing. But you have to have a presence for your people so that we can know that you are still here physically. Nothing is more disheartening to me than when I have to go up to headquarters for something and I see that nobody's in their offices. And I know it's probably not because they're in the field, that they're all maybe traveling at once. And that, I'm not going to lie, that stings a little bit, because where are the people watching out for me and my brothers and sisters? You have to make your people know that I have been hired to watch out for you and to guide you, and that is what I am busy doing. So you have to have a presence. You have to have open communication. It might feel dumb to you. I don't care. Have some sort of constant communication with the field. Hey, here's what we are working on right now in time. We've identified this problem. Here's the 5 ways in which we're currently trying to emergency fix it, because we realize how important it is to you guys. It might be unfair because your workload, as the higher up you get, you got some intense workloads. And I know you're going home, you're probably taking that workload with you. But people in the field might not see that. What they see is they see people sitting in an air-conditioned office, sleeping through the night. So have that communication of, listen, I know this is probably what people think of me, so I'm going to let them know that I see their problems and I am consistently working on their behalf. That's what we want to feel. We want to feel seen and heard, and know that somebody above our pay grade who has a voice is constantly working to protect and to represent us. That's the senior staff expectation from me. Senior staff expectation of me, show up on the calls and be incredibly polite to citizens. Don't be causing chaos that I'm going to have to go as a member of senior staff and talk about to the media. Act appropriately. Do your job in an incredibly respectful way. At the end of the day, citizens are consumers, right? We are selling the product that is our training and our service and our department. Act accordingly. You go down a couple levels and you have battalion chiefs and their expectation in the field. I would assume their expectation of me, like I'm not a battalion chief, that's why I say I would assume, their expectation of me should be, hey, you need to be sharp. You need to be consistent. You need to be training. You need to be on the ball. When you show up, I should not have to micromanage anybody. I should be able to sit back and do my job, which is watch out for you guys in the fire ground, protect you, identify hazards, give me the space to do my job by doing and knowing your job. And my expectation of my battalion chief would be to be the go-between between myself and senior staff, and to make sure that things are running smoothly in the battalion and hold people accountable so that when I run calls with the other companies, I know that they are smooth because I have got a kick-ass battalion chief who is keeping everybody on the same page and making sure that our little corner of the world is cohesive and all up to speed and to par with their skills. Captain and lieutenant below, I would expect that my captain would hold me accountable for my actions and for my training or lack of. I would expect my captain would also monitor my well-being. Like if I'm sitting quietly in the corner of a table, there is probably something either A, about to happen, or something completely gone wrong in my world. Monitor your people. And that's the expectation I have of my officers is, hey, know the temperature of our firehouse. Pay attention to if maybe one of us is acting differently. Quiet is the scariest thing in a firehouse. If somebody is sitting at the table quiet, or they're consistently looking tired, or they're the super sharp firefighter who's always great with the citizens, and maybe they're staying quiet around the citizens on call. Yeah, I expect you to be able to monitor those things just like any other member of the shift and pick them up and hold me accountable when I am not being motivated or being consistent, or if I'm starting to slip up because I'm goofing off too much or whatever it is. I think at every level of the fire service, you just named a bunch of ranks. I think the biggest and most consistent thing that I expect at every single rank is trust and communication. Those are two consistent things that are absolutely vital in any fire department, and we have to fight to keep those in place. We have to fight to make sure that we have trust at every rank and every level, and we have to fight to ensure that we are making the time to communicate with our person, whether it be chief to firefighters, firefighter to captain, whatever it is. Without those two things, even if just one gets knocked out of place, you're screwed as a department.
Yeah, that's a lot of stuff, and I was taking notes.
All right,
No,
long-winded
no,
answer.
that's a lot of good stuff, and I was taking notes as you were going. And starting off with senior staff, I never considered myself senior staff when I was a battalion chief in Montgomery County. I always felt that was such a unique position because I had one foot in operations, but I also had one foot in management. And like you had said, that battalion chief is the go-between. That's the person that carries the flag for the floor as well as the fire chief. So that's the person that's getting that communication, that's letting the assistant and deputies and fire chief know this is what's going on the floor. They're taking that pulse. So
But,
they need to
and
be
really quickly,
yeah.
to add to that, the best mentors I've ever had have been battalion chiefs, because they're the ones who see, like your captain is consistently busy running that call. Your battalion chiefs have a little bit more of that 100-foot view, and so they can see the members of their battalion and see where to mentor people. And that is a fantastic rank because of that. I don't think battalion chiefs realize how much mentorship power they have.
And they need to realize that, because they are the ones that can make or break the battalion. I always viewed it as, when I made my rounds, I had 7 stations I was responsible for, and I always visited every single station. The best days was when there was a box alarm and I got to see 5 of the 7 stations on a call, so I could just kind of BS with them while we were on the scene. But going to the firehouse and just sitting down and seeing how everybody's doing and talking to them and have a cup of coffee or whatever. 15, 20 minutes, unless we had some stuff to talk about, and then I just move on to the next station. And I enjoy doing that because I could see what was going on, and to the point where they felt comfortable that they could tell me things that were bothering them, or things that they saw that that bothered them about the job, or maybe be able to crush rumors. When they hear something that's not quite factual, you can nip that before it gets anywhere. But now, once I retired and I'm working as an assistant chief, and they consider that senior staff in Frederick. I don't get out of the office as much as I want to myself and my boss. My first line supervisor, he's also retired battalion chief from Montgomery County. That's all we want to do is go out and to stations and run calls. But unfortunately, we have other work that has to be done. But I definitely, will reach out to some of the volunteer chiefs and call them just to make sure things are going good. And every now and then, if I get an email that they have a concern about something, I'll call them and say, "Hey, man, you mind if I come out to your station? You and I can sit down," because I hate trying to talk over email or even on the phone. I'd rather do the face to face. I think you get a lot more accomplished. But as far as expectations, like you and I talked offline, the expectation from senior staff, in my opinion, and this is what I've always viewed it as, is that we just want you to do your job, and we want you to be able to
Right.
follow the policies. And if for some reason you can't
Don't create
follow,
more work.
yeah, you can't follow that particular policy, just make sure that it's communicated. That you can't do something like on the fire ground. If you're supposed to do a 360, but you can't get to the rear, you voice it on the radio. Hey, I can't get to the rear, so third due, I'm going to need you to give me get a Charlie report. So those are, I think, the expectations from, in my opinion, from senior staff to the officers, battalion chiefs, and lieutenants, captains, and firefighters to just do your job. And if you're having a problem doing your job or you can't complete a task, you just have to let us know. I think that. Go ahead.
Oh no, sorry. Finish that thought.
Yeah, I think that the firefighters and line officers look at the senior staff thinking that our expectations are just way over the top, and maybe in some departments it is, but for me, it's never been beyond doing your job because I came up through the rank. I came up through the ranks, and I never felt like that they were expect so much of me that I was doomed for failure. They understand, and when I say they, we understand that the job that we have to do in the companies is huge compared to what it used to be. There's so much stuff on our plate now that we have to do between mandatory training, either be for the state or the federal government, as well as for the department, running calls, doing your reports, all the things that come with that, committees. There's a lot on the plate, and senior staff recognizes that, and we know that it's not going to get done in a day. But sometimes I think that the fire department, the firefighters and the officers think that we want all that stuff done immediately. We know that there's got to be time built into that because there's not enough hours in the day. But what it comes down to is communication. The senior staff needs to communicate that I know we've got a lot. We're giving you a lot. We want you to get as much done as you can. We know it's not all going to get done, but here's what we want. So if they're just honest and just tell us what you want, or we tell you what we want, then it should be achievable. And we also need to make sure that it is achievable. Any goal has to be realistic. And if we're not giving you the tools or the budget or whatever to get those jobs done, then it is going to fall short. And then we can't blame anybody but the process itself. So as far as senior staff is concerned, I think the biggest thing is that, we want you guys to make good decisions based on the information that you have. We want you to do your job. We want to make sure that if the policies that are being written or put out there, they work. If there's a problem with the policies, they should feel comfortable enough to say, hey, here's the issue that we're running into. Are we viewing this wrong, or do we have room to make improvements? And I think it all comes down to communication. But go ahead and jump into what you were going to say.
No, just communication. To go back to that, I think it was Pearl in Texas. I was listening to a podcast, and I believe it was their assistant chief was saying that he has a coffee policy that he does where he goes into firehouses and he sits down at the table with a cup of coffee, and if you want to come sit with him and have a cup of coffee and talk about stuff, he does, but it's not a scheduled, everybody run and hide, the assistant chief is coming kind of visit. It's just a casual, here I am, checking the temperature of the fire department that I serve. And I think that's so huge because it shows that there is an open line of communication to the top, but it also shows, hey, I'm out here paying attention, not to check up on you and make sure nobody's cussing the firehouse, but I'm just out here listening to the problems you guys have so I can take it back and potentially fix it. The expectation is really that it's not my job to fix things. It's my job to run the calls. It's your job to fix things. What are you doing to fix it? And are you even around enough to pay attention to what needs to be fixed? You and I work in an area that is such a special devil, and that is the area all around DC. Because if you work in a department anywhere around DC, you're involved in a lot of committees, you're picked up to do a lot of stuff. You can be a lower ranked chief and go be a fire chief somewhere else just because of the call level and everything else of the departments around that area. It's a very demanding role to be anything chief in this area. And because you're being pulled 50 different ways, the appearance can be that you're not around for your people. So what is it that you're doing to say, no, listen, when I'm on a committee, it's because I still have to better myself as a chief and a firefighter, right? I don't get to chief and get to stop growing. I'm doing these things because if I'm going to be a chief, assistant, or deputy, I need to continue growing. This isn't me ignoring my people. Do you really want me to sit still and be a stagnant chief who hasn't learned anything? That kind of stuff can be communicated when you're sitting at a table in a firehouse drinking coffee and giving your people a clearer view of what it is that you are doing to serve them. And part of that might be explaining, hey, you know what? I haven't been around lately. Here's why. I've been bettering myself for this job by going out and looking for the answers in other departments to this problem that we haven't been able to solve ourselves in our department. It might be something as simple as that. But you're never going to be able to communicate that if you're not sitting at that kitchen table with that cup of coffee.
Yeah, I enjoyed going into the stations and just sitting down and talking with the guys. One of the things that you hit, we talked about running calls. I've run into this a couple of times recently is, when someone from senior staff shows up on a call, and believe me, if I'm close, I'm going to run the call. I'm not going to run the call as in the incident commander, but I'm going to run the call because I like watching firefighters do fireman shit. I enjoy watching people do their job. But lately, you see, you feel, and it might not be verbalized, but you feel when you get on the scene, they're looking at you like, oh, great, what did we do? Why is this guy here? Does he not think I know how to do my job? And I'm not going to say it doesn't hurt my feelings because I don't have any of those, but it's more of, why would you think that if you're not doing anything wrong? Now, believe me, we all know chiefs out there that think that they are perfect and that there's always room that the people need to do things their way. Every call never goes right, and we have to nitpick it. But for the most part,
don't be that guy.
Yeah, most chiefs aren't that way. If I'm close, I'm going to go to the call and watch the guys perform, and I'll go to the command post and like, hey, you need anything? If not, I'm just going to go take a lap, and if the call is winding down, I call it, I'm going to go, kiss some hands and shake some babies, and just run for mayor. As Frank Ritchie, a friend of mine, he would always say, everywhere you go, just run for mayor. I think that that's important because I've always been of the belief that the firefighters, especially the firefighters, the younger firefighters, they want that face time with senior staff.
Right.
Believe it or not, a lot of people, that whole like, oh God, if you come to the scene of a call or you walk into a firehouse as an assistant chief or higher, and the first reaction is, great, what did we do? You as a senior staff are doing it wrong. Somewhere along the line, you have done something to make these people have animosity around white shirts, and that needs to change. I remember as a battalion chief, I pulled in front of a firehouse one day and I heard over the PA because it went out into the parking lot, FYI, chiefs in quarters. And I ran in and I said, who said that? And I said, who said that? They wouldn't own up to it. I said, let me tell you something. I come here because I like coming here talking to you guys. Don't ever feel like you have to straighten up right away. Unless you're doing some dumb shit, that you got to straighten up right away because the chief's here. You got to go throw your uniform shirt off. I have never been a chief that has looked at somebody at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and go, why aren't you in uniform? My feeling was if you're not in uniform, there's probably a good reason. And I'm fine with that. At the end of the day, as long as you're running the calls and you're doing your job. But if you are senior staff and people are suspicious when you walk into the firehouse or when you show up on the scene of a call, then you as a senior staff member are doing it wrong and you need to fix that. And the only way you can fix that is through honest communication, consistency, and going out and getting FaceTime with these people. They want to talk to you.
Amen.
In Frederick, every week, every Tuesday, the senior staff, and it's usually the deputies and the fire chief, they go to a firehouse. And we do it in order, starting with station 1, go all the way around. And they know we're coming. It's never a surprise. And we sit down at the kitchen table and we say, there's no script. We're just here to talk. What do you guys got? You heard any good rumors? Any good rumors that we can start, that we can, or whatever, just try to make it very lighthearted. And a lot of times they won't talk. So we have some stuff. We talk about apparatus and building new stations and stuff like that. And then that kind of fosters a conversation where people have questions. But we try to get all the divisions there so they can talk about, admin stuff and apparatus and operations and volunteer services and, and whatnot. So I think that's a good thing that they do, but it never sparks this really good conversation. I don't know if it's just people don't have anything to say, or that we communicate everything perfectly, which is not true because no fire service does, or they don't want to say anything. And I tell people, you can tell me anything as long as you're respectful about it. If you don't like the way I do something and you want to have that conversation, we'll have a private conversation, but just be respectful. I'm going to be respectful to you. But I think that people need to understand, especially assistant chiefs and deputies and the fire chief need to understand that these people want to see you. They want to talk to you. They want to have access to you. And even in the Washington metropolitan area, we are some of the busiest firehouses on the East Coast, especially in the Mid-Atlantic region. We're very busy, but we're not too busy and we're not too big that fire chief can't come out of his office and sit down in a firehouse and have a cup of coffee and just BS with the guys, especially if they came up through the ranks. And that's the way it should be everywhere. That's my opinion.
No, 100% agree. You are not wrong in any of it.
I think that, as far as, what the whole expectation thing is, not only if you have these expectations, as long as they're not unrealistic, everybody has to know them, but they also have to understand that they're not concrete. They're malleable. They have to be, because not every call.
It's a malleable job.
Right. Not every call is the same. I mean, we're rolling up on the scene of something we're dispatched for, and it's something totally different. We're charged, and I say this all the time, to make decisions with imperfect, very little information, and we're adjusting on the fly. And taking it back to the beginning of this entire podcast, when I talk to these new people, I said, yes, a lot of bad things can happen in the fire service. A lot of bad things can happen to you. But some of the good things is we're going to teach you to be more confident in yourself. We're going to teach you to be critical and creative thinkers, because you have to think on the fly. At the end of the day, who does 911 call? We're it. We are the only ones that when there is something bad happens, it can be on the scene in 8 minutes. The military can't do that. The federal government can't do that. We do that. So we teach people to be critical thinkers, to look at life differently, to look at situations differently, and to understand that whatever someone's going through is bad for them, but it's not the worst thing you've ever seen. You have that empathy. But it also lets you take a look at things that happen in life and say, life's not so bad, especially with some of the calls that we run. I was eating lunch with my daughter today, and I said, hey, your mother and I are very proud. You're doing really well in college. We appreciate that. I said, just understand one thing. Life is good. For you and your brother, for your mother and I, life is good. Do bad things happen sometimes? Absolutely. My wife's a nurse. She sees bad things. I see bad things. But overall, our life is good. And she goes, okay. I said, so don't look for the doom and gloom in life. I know you're a teenager, but at the end of the day, life is good. And in the fire service, life is good. You're in the best job, hands down, any other occupation that I can think of, and everybody will argue with me because if they love their job, then they love their job. But I tell people, would you rather be laying asphalt in August on the highway, or would you rather be sitting in the station, maybe where it's air conditioning and might have to run a call? And oh, by the way, that 24 hours that you're working, if you don't run that 5 calls after midnight, you're still getting paid your salary. So our job,
we're gonna run those 5 calls after midnight at my house. But yeah.
right? Our job is good. Career volunteer, it's a calling, it's a good job, and we get a lot of good things that come out of that. There are bad things that come out of it, but we do the network that we have in the fire service now to be able to deal with things like that is tremendous. They didn't have that back in the mid 1900s when we got hired, the mid to late 1900s. But the things that we have.
My feelings were hurt when that was dropped the first time.
Yeah, I know. When I heard that the first time, I'm like, oh my God, you're right. But I think that life is good, and if people in the fire service constantly look for the bad, they're going to have a terribly long career that is full of disappointment. And that whole saying, never forget where you came from, it has to be that way. I tell people, if it wasn't for my volunteer department, I would have probably never gotten to be a career person. So I didn't forget that I came from the volunteers. Fast forward 35 years, I'm working for the volunteers now. Working for the county, but in volunteer services. But I also didn't forget what it was like to be that brand new firefighter when the fire chief walked in and was scared because I didn't want to say something stupid. But understand that when I'm in that position now and I see the new firefighter, I go over and shake their hand. Hey, how's everything going? I'm fortunate I get to see them at the academy and they're roaming around the hallways and tell them, hey, how's class going? How you liking EMT? How you doing? You getting studying done? You getting any sleep? How's the PT going? I get to just have those conversations. And it's funny, you see the look on their face because they don't know what to do, because I don't think the senior staff really stops and talks to them a lot. But I just want to hear how they're doing. And I ask them, hey, you ever been in the fire department before? Nope. First time ever? How you liking it? Oh, I love it. And they're kind of looking for the exit because they don't know where this conversation's going. I want to talk to them. I want to know what they're doing. And hopefully, as they graduate, they come back and say, oh, yeah, Chief Pollock, that's a pretty cool guy. He's a pretty easy guy to talk to. And hopefully that carries forward. So when they start moving ahead in the ranks and I'm long gone, be approachable. Don't just say I have an open door policy. Be approachable. That's my soapbox. That's my soapbox.
No, and just, I think this is a perfect wrapping up point. Just to expand on what you said about that other shoe dropping mentality. We're always going to find something negative about the fire service. And right now, I think we are a little bit down in the dumps because we are getting this much needed barrage of health data, and we're seeing why so many people are dying or have passed. And so we're struggling a little bit with it because all of a sudden we're realizing that this job we absolutely love and adore is killing us. Maybe it's making us love and adore it and be a little less loyal to it. But I think the thing we need to shift away from, all right, we're seeing this information, we're realizing it, we're digesting it. Now let's make sure we're looking up to the people who are fighting for it and continuing to do our job, trusting that there are people stepping up to battle those things that are destroying us instead of just waiting for that sky to fall in and the next shoe to drop. Because we are having a little bit of a retention issue and recruitment issue because of that. And we are always going to need the fire service. The fire service cannot go away and will not go away. People will always burn down their houses and people will always get sick and people will always put places things they shouldn't be. Fire service is here to stay. So let's find a way to take that negative outlook that you were talking to your daughter with and make sure that we are not drowning in it with all this new stuff that is coming at us. And my point with that and how it ties in is let's definitely make sure we're not passing that on to this brand new generation of kids. They're already getting a barrage of information through social media. Let's not add to that negativity. Let's focus on those people who are working to change that data that's coming at us and to improve it for all of us. Let's not scare off the new generation with a negative attitude.
That's very well said. And with that, we'll close out the show. Stephanie, thank you for your time out of your day. I know you're driving home from I'll call it the Midwest, but taking this almost hour out of your day to talk. It's always good hearing from you. I like hearing your 5 After Midnight podcast. It's full of ton of information, and those that have been living under a rock and don't know about it, you can find her on Instagram, on fire engineering, for the podcast 5 After Midnight. It's a good podcast. Plus, you're doing podcasts with a lot of other people, which I think is kind of cool with this fire service podcast community. We are all on each other's podcasts, which is kind of cool. I love being on other people's podcasts because they have to come up with the show, and I just answer the questions as opposed to trying to think of things
Isn't
to
that
say.
nice?
It is nice.
Way less stress.
It is way less stress. But anyway, thank you very much for coming on and taking the time out of your day.
Thank you so much, Chief.
You have a safe trip home, and I'll talk to you. If I don't talk to you anytime, I'll see you on social media, but I'll definitely see you at FDIC in April.
I will be there. Hopefully, you'll be in my class.
Never know. Maybe you'll be in mine, but mine's a 4-hour workshop, so you'd have to actually pay for it.
Woof. Well, I will see you there.
All right. Take it easy.
See you, Chief.
Bye. Thanks for listening to this month's Side Alpha Leadership. You can reach us on the web at www.sidealphaleadership.com. We're on social media, on Instagram at Side Alpha Leadership, on Twitter at Leadership Side, and on Facebook for Side Alpha Leadership.